Hello and welcome. Come on in, come on in. Oh, we have cat friends. Hello. Hello, Lady Ruby. Calling in the peoples with the cat playing at my feet. Come on in, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Come in, come in. I am checking in just for a little bit. I was on yesterday or the day before and had to suddenly pop off really quickly. So I thought I'd hop on for a bit and see if there are any questions or things that are really alive for people around energy, grid work, multidimensionality, spirit talks, the whatnot. Right now there are a lot of people who are deepening in and activating their energetic awarenesses, abilities, gifts. And so I'm trying to be on here a little bit more. So much fun to be had. Today I have been working on some guided meditations. Some that will be widely available and some that are going directly to the people who are joining my channeling workshop next weekend. So that's why I have so much happening here where I normally do not. It's fun. It's fun to play a little bit of dress up. I usually don't give myself the sort of time for that. I really have the call to it often. I'm like, I could be doing other things at that time. But when it's in alignment, it's a lot of fun. I've been thinking a lot recently about how these big changes of the last 2 years and the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, the way that they set us up for the world to come in a certain way. That there is this really breaking down of old systems and old paradigms that is necessary before we can build anything that's really truly new and sustainable. And we're just so in the deep muck of it all. But every step in the muddiness is actually a step towards this very different, bright, sustainable future for many of us at least. And I can't pull the two apart. So as things are getting more intense in the outside world, I just feel us drawing closer and closer to this different way of being. And there are already really juicy prizes, rewards, is one way to think of it, that we'll be encountering over these next couple of years, including the rise of a lot of divine partnerships blossoming between new dimensional healers and different light bearers. It's time for our personal emanations and our personal purpose and work in the world to be amplified by our most intimate relationships. Yeah, and there is a different match, and not everyone needs to have that super amplified divine partnership. But for those who are called to it, it is becoming more and more available to us, especially starting this year. Pop down here and see what's going on. Deja Vu 7, hello and welcome. Good to see you. So if you have any questions about energy or spirit or yourself as a living, breathing, walking, multidimensional channel, you can drop them into the bottom. That's really the work that's happening. There are all of these different individual tasks we're working with, but it's all pointed towards really embodying your full channelhood, allowing yourself to be that divine vessel, that tool of divinity active on the earth plane. Hey, Dark Monster, welcome. We're just sort of chatting in general about multidimensionality, and I'm talking a little bit about like the changes that are coming in the next 10 years, and just the reality we're living in is very different than it was even just a few short months ago. We have opened into a new chapter for sure on the earth plane. So, yeah. It's so nice to be caught thunder. Yeah, so if there's anybody you think that might enjoy a conversation in here, certainly share the chat, share the live, call people in. That's the thing. This year is so much of this. There's so much clumping energy is really how I experience it, right? Like creating our communities of affinity, having the conversations that we find really nourishing with the people who are able to hold space for those thoughts and feelings and experiences. Drawing people in so that we can amplify each other, raise each other up. Yeah. Hi, Carlita. Welcome. Today, as I was recording, I need to go back to it in a little bit as well, but as I was recording these guided meditations, I kept sort of dropping into this really almost physically wet, like pool of consciousness. It was just all consuming and so beautiful, such a perfect oneness. Dropping into that space while recording a guided meditation. I'm curious to see if anybody notices a different experience, because I was really deep in there for a while. Ouch. Cats are a little wily now. I have this one. She's a very intense stereotype of a cat. Okay, let's see what's over here. People's true selves are coming out. Yeah, I mean, in general, we're, as a collective, losing the ability to mask ourselves the way that we did before, in the good and the challenging. Somebody sent me a rose. Thank you so much for that. Lots of fear systems crashing, the impulse to prep. Yeah, and there's a lot of that that's floating around, and some of that is just the collective that we're picking up on, and some of it is that we are being called into a different shape of our lives. And I really want to encourage us all to not take anything for granted, not take our beliefs for granted, our assumptions. This is a wonderful time to pull back the layers of cultural assumption. So preparation is a really juicy place for that often, because I think for the vast majority of Western culture, this idea of like actual physical prepping, the subculture of preppers, to take it to that point, for many it's inherently tied to fear. What if we were always preparing for the greatness ahead, preparing for the transition? Just like when you're getting ready to go on a really long road trip, let's say you're driving cross country and you're going to be in the car for a week or something. You know, you pack in a certain way for that. You get extra snacks and water and some precautionary items for that trip. Not because it has to result in catastrophe, but that's what you do to transition from one side of the continent to the other with some comfort. And that's what we're doing here as well, both in preparing our lives physically, 3D-wise, in certain ways, and even more so in preparing our internal selves. We are preparing to be the people we were always going to be, that we always have been. And that preparation is really just the stepping towards sitting fully in ourselves. And that includes preparing our lives, right? Because the more that you're bringing your material life into alignment, into that place where it just feels good, right? Spirit isn't giddy. It's not all like effervescent, like, joy. What we're actually looking for in that feeling of alignment is just a quiet, this is good enough now. I'm not reaching for other stuff, just this is good. And as we follow that feeling, the uncomplicated, this is pure good, like, I'm down with this. I'm not trying to hold something back or put a story on it. The more that we drop into that, the more everything opens up. We literally tap into packets of energy that open up along the path and guide us towards where we're going to be nourished and feel safe and good and loved, as opposed to the other experiences some in the collective will be having of fear and scarcity and sort of hyper-tribalism. And that's all going to be happening, and we will be witnessing it, but it doesn't mean we need to be living in that emotional experience. It doesn't mean we need to be cultivating that in our lives or for others. Yeah, a lot is going on underneath the conscious surface. A lot of us are having altered sleep experiences. Dark Monster, you're saying, I want to care about some of this stuff, but for some reason it feels like I don't need to. I don't know. Yeah, great. Follow that. If you're not called to it, you don't have to do it. Your soul has its own unique plan. And one of the things that really gets us as a collective, this is a human tendency in general, is that we see someone else going through certain actions or thought processes and we jump to a should. I should be doing that as well. And if you're not actually called, it's not meant for you. Or maybe it's meant for you a little further down the road when something has aligned properly. But not everybody needs to go through the same steps. And in general, this is a larger thing we're stepping into over the next decade. The human collective, especially in the West, this is harder for us, especially in the United States. But the idea that there is no one way, right? Like even the way that we talk about bodies and health is an illusion. As if there is some baseline healthy human being. Science has no idea what that is. Newsflash. If this is news to you, this is important. Science doesn't actually know what a baseline healthy human being is and what those measurements should be. And more evidence across all parts of science are pointing towards, there's a lot of interesting subjectivity to be wrestling with here, where really it's the effects of a quantum reality. We are all having our own experience with reality in one way or another, colored from being shot through our particular lens. This is true even with the laws of physics. When we get down to a certain point, past that point of measurement, the laws of physics break down and go crazy pants. The only thing that is a guaranteed consistent thing in this universe is the oneness of all things ultimately. That it is all divine consciousness, the universal field. Portledge School loves you. Thanks for your sweet words, Unearthed Dreamer. Long creations. It's a lot of trust and allow. Yes. That's exactly it. That's it. Trust. Allow it. Invite in what it is you want in, and invite out what it is you want to leave. And then trust it will happen. And allow it to blossom. That is really, those are the keys to the kingdom. It's so simple. And that's actually the case of most things in this reality. It's in a 3D matrix. In many ways, it is hyper simple. But within that, because it is so separate from obvious in your face flashing truth for most people, it's easy to get lost in the sort of games and refracting light. But really the game of this reality, to make things happen, to align yourself with the reality and the frequency you most enjoy, is simply inviting it consciously and trusting it will happen and allowing it to flow. It's all the efforting that really screws us over. Really, there are so many pieces to the sort of consumerist or Western capitalist models that very directly clamp us down into a life where our intuition feels far away, where we don't trust ourselves, where everything is hard. Things have to be hard for that system to work. There has to be friction and tension for it to end up productive, which is not how we're actually designed. Especially those of us who are new dimensional healers. And this is one of the things that happens sometimes in the awakening and ascension process, is sometimes people hit this point when they've been living a life that's very out of alignment for their actual design. And they hit this point of awareness where they straight up just cannot work a normal job. And this doesn't happen to everyone. But there are some people, it's like they hit a wall. And they keep trying and forcing and like pulling themselves up by the bootstraps. And it's like, I'm making this happen. And the more they try, the more physically ill they will become. And usually those people are the people who have gone really overboard with the efforting lesson, the make it happen lesson. And so they have to unwind themselves from that system. But everybody who has been raised in this group of cultures is influenced by those structures, even on the very deep conditioning level. So those of you who drop into stillness, into things just being easy, into surrendering and trusting that like everything is going to get taken care of, it's going to be fine. I salute you. Yay for you. But it looks really good. Lady Ruby's scratching. Okay. I'm meandering in thought here. Okay, let's see. Could you talk about your channeling the other evening about not trying to change, heal old paradigm? Yes. I don't know if you have specific questions about my channeling the other evening or just this specifically. So if it's more specific than healing old paradigm, drop it down there. So, this is one of the hard ones. I can actually feel a little bit of emotion around this floating out there. So, we are so used to thinking of the heartbreaking and challenging parts of this reality as needing healing. Every single person listening to this is a healer. That is your calling on this planet, regardless of how you live your life or what you do and do not experience on a day-to-day basis. If you are listening to this and resonate with my work, you are a healer and you are programmed to be that way on this planet. It's a design, right? It's like an actual energetic and physical design to be a healer. It simply means you have a much greater capacity for self-awareness. That's the most simple definition. So, since we are working with a much higher level of self-awareness, that means everything that we see and we witness hits us much more deeply and with a lot more detail. There's a lot of nuance that happens there. Watching the 3D reality, the old paradigm, can be physically painful for us sometimes. And we have such a deep programming, energetically, ego-wise, conditioning put on us by the world, our religious traditions, all of this builds us towards the goal is be a good person. A good person is someone who is of service, right? That's a very common story. Even if we don't think we've consciously taken it on, we have all soaked in that cultural soup. So we're living our lives and we see the pain and the struggle and what often seems like unnecessary suffering happening throughout the old paradigm. And when we do that, there's always a choice. The choice is, am I going to judge it or am I going to witness it? Because the moment we want to fix it, we're judging it. You can't decide that something needs your intervention, that it's not okay on its own, and you need to intervene in some way without judging it first. And that's the first step, is stop judging. In general, I mean, eventually we're all going to have to drop that tendency. And there will always also be little flashes of that we come in and out of, because we're always 100% human too. But when you let go of judging the old paradigm, you let go of a lot of the desire to change it. It is not meant to be changed. It's not our game to transmute that entire dimension, because that's what it is. It's a separate dimensional pocket. It overlaps with ours, and that's a part of being in a fourth dimensional experience. We're accessing 3D and 5D in and out all the time, waving in and out. There can be parts of us that are experiencing one and parts that are experiencing the other at the same moment. And so we didn't come here to destroy it, heal it, escape it, erase it. None of that. In one way or another, we will always have some kind of awareness of the old paradigm on this planet. Even at the points where some of us are tucked away in our remote little eco-village 5D pockets, there will be points where we're aware of the old paradigm and its experience. And that's just part and parcel for being on this planet and being extra open and extra sensitive. So our work isn't to judge those who are choosing an old paradigm experience. That's a different game. And I would love us to start applying some sort of metaphor that works for you in these sorts of situations. I like to think about it as sports. You know, there are people who are playing the old paradigm game, and they're baseball people. And then there are people who are playing the new dimension game, and those are basketball people. One is not inherently superior to the other. The experience of watching those games is completely different. The rules of how everything functions is different. The culture that you encounter with those around you is different. But baseball is not inherently worse than basketball. It's just meant for some people and not for others. That is what's happening on this planet. You happen to be playing the new dimension game. All of us have had very intimate experiences with the old paradigm. Some of us, our souls have designed a lifetime where we will continue to have a lot of intense contact with it through our lives, because that's a part of our purpose. But if that's the case, you will feel called to that. That will feel aligned for you. That will feel nourishing for you. And we all have choice, right? But so much of the suffering that is happening on this planet right now isn't actually about bodily harm. It isn't about life-threatening actual moments in front of us. It's about judgment. It is fear of being judged, the discomfort in actually being judged, the discomfort in judging others, right? The moment we're looking outward and judging someone, we're activating something inside of ourselves, right? You cannot be in judgment of someone else without it somehow pointing back to you. Always. So if we can start to let go of that, if we can learn to love the old paradigm for what it is, to hold space for it as something different and hard. From our perspective, that's a hard game. then we can redirect our energy, our focus, our magic to where it can truly be appreciated and flourish, which is in a new dimensional existence, right? Which happens inside. It's not what it looks like on the outside. It's all in here. It's how you hold your sovereignty, your life, your yes and your no. Sacred yes and sacred no. Those are the ways you direct yourself into alignment and high frequency experience. Okay. Thought you said Tay. I am not a technical nun. That's interesting, actually. A lot of energy comes up for me as I say that. Partly because I've definitely been a nun in another lifetime. It's very tied to this one. And partly, I think, because I am a part of a collective of healers that in some ways do kind of resemble what on earth are like nuns. But no, I'm not. Can't remember if it was your connection with Metatron, but was surprised that our purpose is not to change it. Yeah, I know. The Earth Dreamer, what are you asking about ego? Are you asking if we are meant to change our egos? I'm not quite sure there. I work a lot with Metatron, and in fact, my work logo has, I can't remember what it's called right now. It has a special name. But that sacred geometry that is representative of Metatron is woven into my personal logo. I think it's a great ally. They are a wonderful ally for all of those who are doing public channeling. Some really high frequency vibes there. Like convulsing in one place, crying and shaking and snot pouring kind of activations is what I've had with Metatron in the past. Those are not casual conversations for me. There are some spirits that I will just like hang out and shoot the shit with. Metatron is not one of those. Let's see, where am I? Ego. Is there a training for the collective of healers you would suggest? Okay, well, I feel self-conscious saying this, but Spirit says it is the right answer to suggest that what I am most familiar with are the trainings that I'm offering. That is what I'm starting at this point, and next weekend is our first workshop. You can follow the link in my bio if you're curious to find out more about that. But New Dimension Healer Collectives, what has been happening for like the last 5 to 10 years is there has been a very active awakening and deep training of sort of the very first round of new dimensional healers. And so there are people who were born just to train us, right? And so then we have all trained now to the point where we're taking on our own communities and starting our own retreats and teachings and all of that. And so the work is just starting, and the modalities in which we're going to be learning and teaching are just being born now, which is really exciting. I don't know if I've posted it already or not. I think I did. I'm just having a lot of fun right now learning about how these collectives, these lineages are intended to sprout and blossom in this reality. And literally now, 2022 is when that really starts. We're just starting to break the surface. It's so exciting. Oh my God. I mean, I've literally been waiting my whole life for this, / 7 other lifetimes. And so if you, to come into a more broad lens, I am not the only one, right? I'm in my own little canoe doing my thing, but there are many other healers that are also offering their own different kinds of teachings. So my recommendation is, instead of trying to find one particular teacher, because you'll move through many different people over several years, you know, it's kind of like we're all designed to sort of take and make a special little like personal platter of the teachings and activations that really work for us at whatever point we are in our journey. So think about what you're called to. Is there something that you're really wanting to learn? And then follow that urge. Do some research, follow the synchronicities to find the teachers that are offering that. But really follow that gut feeling. You want to have like an effervescence in the chest, or an expansive feeling, or down in second chakra. A lot of people are really rooted in that sort of lower chakra knowing. And you want that also to feel pleasurable, and expansiveness and effervescence and tingling. For some people, there's like an almost pre-orgasmic feeling that comes in, the yoni, yes. And so follow those little things, because you're going to get your openings and everything as you're following your curiosity and your yes. So if you're curious to learn more about new dimensional channeling and full embodiment as a healer on the planet, that's what I'm offering next weekend. But in general, just let your soul know, like speak the intention aloud that you want to explore this idea more. You want to find a little bit of teaching or leadership or something. Speak it out. And that way you are giving the official green light to your own soul, to guidance, that you're ready to receive that awareness, right? All the information you could ever want is already floating in your field. It's just like, oh, okay, do we bring that record forward and like put it on the player? Metatron's cube. Yes, that is it. Thank you so much, Dishavy. How does Mike feel about Vicki? Meh. That's it. It's really underwhelming. There's a little bit of deception on top. You're welcome, Rosewater. Rosewater is. Okay. Your new sessions coming up for beginner stage, or do I need to be more seasoned? So the way this is designed is that it's for anyone with a basic knowledge of energy. So that means having some understanding of chakras, that there's a central column of energy, and at least an intellectual understanding that we are energy beings having a physical experience in a very flexible reality. So that's the baseline. We're not going to go over like each chakra and all of that. There will be just a quick not glossing over, but review of anatomy in the beginning. And then it can hold anyone up to very seasoned practitioners, especially for those who have been channeling in the old paradigm method, those who have been channeling for 30 years, things like that. There's going to be probably some juicy perspective shift. And that's a big part of what this is in general. It's not just how to channel. That's almost the byproduct. It's really how to live every moment of your life as an embodied light being that is built to be a channel, an active portal. There's a lot that goes to that. So I hope that answers it. It's not for absolute raw beginners, but you don't need to have a lot of prerequisite information. And everybody's going to get a few days beforehand a little packet with some handouts and such, that reviewing that will also give you a good baseline to come in with. Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. It's been so much fun doing all of the writing for it. Everything's easier when you're channeling information. I've really come to see that. You know, as someone who in my former life I was totally dedicated to writing and teaching writing and producing text. It's a different flow. I am now more of like a sacred stenographer. So I just like open up the portal and I just like have to keep up with it. Just keep up with it. I can't actually. I do not. I type at like 85 words a minute and I still can't keep up with it in the way that I wish I could. It's so fun though. Any other questions floating around for people out there? Do you still have yearning for writing? I have bursts of it. I've come to realize after about 3 years of sort of internal silence that for most of my life, writing was my only active channeling portal. And so it was very much a coping mechanism. It was the way I made sense of the world. And so it took me a while to unwind sort of the groove of it in my life and the job it used to fill. But I have found that being really full of divinity, basically, you don't want in that state. And so sometimes I'll turn to writing as like a fun outlet, another way to just express in a fun way. And when I have like a really exciting project I'm working on, I get excited to work on it and like really just dive deep and create the space and just like, and I really can feel my like art school nerd self in that experience. But everything is really different because if something is aligned, then it feels good. And if it's not aligned, then it doesn't feel good. And so if I'm just following alignment, then generally things just feel good for the most part. But it's really fun getting to know myself as a writer now and bringing that into my writing relationships. Like I have people that I used to see several times a year just because we would like make sure to go to conferences together and we would, academic nerd out together. And bringing the whole Kristin, right? Channeling spiritual traveler of dimensions Kristin into that very academic space and weaving them together has been really fruitful and has brought out surprising details and elements in the people that I've shared that with. What's an alignment for one is an alignment for all. And I choose carefully too. I'm not looking for essentially putting my pearls before swine. But there was a period where I went silent, and that's when I really started like very serious medicine work. And it was really good that I did go silent because I would have written the crap out of all of that, and it needed to remain tucked away in sort of the sacred cave. And I hadn't learned how to do that yet. I was set to always express, like journals and journals and journals. So it has all moved in a really great way, and I'm grateful for writing returning in such a big way. For me, the Jupiter in Pisces that we're living with right now and had a taste of last year, that is directly tied to my novel project. So it's been juicy. My creative flow has stopped. I'm trying hard to open it, but yeah, and that's not uncommon. There is, I think it's in the public area. Right now on my Patreon, in the public free area, there is a post on sex and ascension. And that is talking, sex and creative energy, the sexual energy and creative energy, this is one thing, right? It's just sexual expression is one particular focused version of how that overall energy can manifest. And so there are a lot of shifts that can happen. as we are awakening, as we're tapping into a much more expansive awareness, as we're remembering and healing. There's a lot going on here, far more than you will ever be consciously aware of. And so there are a lot of shifts and seasons that can come into play with our creative expression. And that might be our libido, that might be our normal creative practices. And there can be big spikes, and more common, especially for those who are born into female bodies, there can be a silencing or going subterranean with those energies for a little while. So if you're curious to sort of ponder that more, I invite you to go check out my Patreon, which you can also find the link in my bio. My link tree has my Patreon there. But yeah, it's something not to judge, not to worry. It's going to come. The collective is also like, this is not a really creativity supportive collective energy. So the more you come into your own experience and stay in your own field, right? And that includes not inviting in the residual energies carried by the people who are intimately in your life too. We're all a lot more sensitive to energy than we were a few months ago. So all of this, it's a little depressed for a lot of people. And it's an opportunity to see what comes forward when the creative energies are not what we're used to them being. How are they still manifesting, maybe in hidden ways or in different ways? How can you play with your own design to draw them forward? This reminds me, actually, thank you, Spirit. I was on a call. I do all of my one-on-one sessions with clients over the phone. And so I was on a call with a client that I've been working with for 3 years, something like that. And we hadn't had a session in a long time. She's okay with me sharing this. And so there's this interesting thing that happens the longer that I work with a person, where sort of the energetic bubble where we work, the workshop space, gets really established and like can just drop in really fast, and the client is familiar with the way the work happens. So we just like get really in there and flexible. And you know, this person is incredibly creative. Like, she just kind of like craps creativity. And over the last 6 months, it has not felt that way. And that's what actually brought her back to me. It's like, she's like, I've tried everything. I've tried all the tools. And now it's just like, please fix me. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll help you fix yourself, because I do not do the fixing. But it was interesting after we got out from under all of the layers of the collective and the stuff she had absorbed from her roommate and all of that. What was left underneath that was depletion. And this is a person who takes incredibly good care of herself. If there is someone on a self-care regimen, it is this person. But all of the things that had worked before were no longer nourishing her in the same way. And we went through the list and we did the intuitive read, you know, to kind of like feel in, like, where is the leak? Where is it? Like, we get really specific, and she just starts naming things. I'm like, nope, not that, not that. And so we finally like hit on the first like little whiff of the trail and started to uncover that all of this depletion was happening in these places that were intended to be nourishing. You know, like her yoga practice, the morning routine in general, all of these things that had been basic cornerstone pieces to her internal structures had become obsolete, kind of all together at once, which was a beautiful sign of the growth and shift that had happened. And that's often what happens, though, when we're shifting really quickly. What matched before doesn't match anymore. And we have to find new ways. So I, you know, pumped her full of a bunch of extra light and did a bunch of buffering and field stuff to support her through the transition. But in that time, she is now figuring out, what are the new things? What are the new nourishments and ways of caring for herself? What are the parts that have gotten a little ignored just out of the habit of how she was caring for herself? I think Spirit's bringing this forward right now as an invitation for us all to get curious and to look at our systems and the ways that we see ourselves and are assuming things are functioning, to let go of the assumption that we know, and to allow it to be a moment-to-moment discovery. Every day, every moment of your life is unfolding with an immense amount of possibility, which we can only really access if we're not coming in automatically shutting down 95% of possibility. That ended up in a different place than I expected. Go, Spirit. Do you think doubt is the only thing that holds one back from fully harnessing gifts? I was just working on this part of the module for the workshop. So, no, it is not. It is a combination of leftover conditioning, feeling into the group that is currently present in this moment. Most of you still have some really concrete energetic conditioning you've absorbed from your upbringing, from the reality, from your experiences, that would probably be easiest to remove with some support in one way or another. Once we drop beneath the conditioning, that is the place where self-doubt then really has an impact. It's hard to access and work with the self-doubt, what is genuinely ours there, when we're trying to cut through and translate all of this confusing stuff on the outside. Now, we can still interact and grow our energetic abilities, our gifts, while we're still wrestling with self-doubt. I still wrestle with it. There are still points where I will literally just straight voice channel a whole thing that is clearly not from me. And the fact that it is so big and potent, afterwards my ego is like, did we imagine that? Was that somehow made up? What was going on there? Even after all of the practice that I have. And so that, for me, I can say, is a combination of little threads of the witch wound that are still there. I'm still clearing teeny tiny little things there. But that as little microscopic things get super activated by my tie to the human collective. So that's the third piece, right? It's not the same as the conditioning. The conditioning we've picked up along the way. Feeling the collective is what's happening right now. And in the collective right now, there is an immense amount of confusion about what's real and what's not. What can we trust and what can we not trust? And most of those people do not trust themselves, especially the ones who are the loudest about trusting themselves. The ones who are like, my way is clearly the best way. Those are the most insecure people, of course. But we're absorbing some of that, and that's a part of the tuning work, the strengthening and focusing that's happening through me and a lot of other channels on the planet right now. Is we are in a season of new dimensional healers and sensitive people being called into that deeper discernment, being called to let go of the self-doubt and the habits that keep us tied to the conditioning and tied to reading into the collective a little too much. I hope that helps. The one thing I will say there actually is working with the self-doubt is the fastest way, though, to short circuit the rest of it. Hi, Kasha. Are you going to have a class about medicine work? Rising beautifully, that's an interesting question. I am curious, what kind of class would you be interested in? That's a really big question. I'm not quite sure what you're pointing towards. So short answer, yes. But I'm not sure what your specific question is hoping for. So do let me know. Thanks for the roses, Reiki Faith. I was wondering, so this is Reiki Faith. I was wondering why a reading I received said I won't be attracted to the man who is coming in. I don't know, but I don't like the feeling of the person who gave you that reading. I'm not going to make a call on their accuracy one way or another, but I'm going to say I personally would not receive a reading from that person. That's, I think, more of the thing to focus on than what you received from them. I'm noticing in you too, there's a wobbliness, so like you're noticing that there is a disresonance between you and that person as well. Focus in on that part. You're welcome, Hayley Noel. Hi, T-Fire. Yeah, conditioning is just, we all are. We all have received massive amounts of conditioning on this planet. That is one of the basic functions within, or one of the basic things that lets the old paradigm function. Conditioning. It's how it stays so dense and sluggish so easily. It really just like takes muck and just like piles it on beings starting from the very beginning. And then that gets sticky and it wants to stick more stuff. And it works really well. It's an energy management system, essentially. Like when you look at it from the fifth dimension and it loses all of its like earth meaning and emotionality and all of that. It's just a way of managing the flow of energy and the flow of awakening energies too. Like money. Money is just a management system of energy and movement in progress. Thank you for your lovely words, Miss Salmon. I love emojis. Let's see. Spiritually me, is there a difference between channeling and receiving downloads? So, no. We talk about it like it is. And in the old paradigm, channeling was this very specific way of transferring information. And there was this sort of way that it happened and it looked a certain way and all of that. We could recognize it. But when you're receiving downloads, all it is that instead of having someone else receive the channeled information, it stays in you. You are the receiver. All channeling has three main parts. There is the person doing the channeling, the actual bridge, the conduit, the in-between point. And then there's the sender, and there's the receiver, right? So when you are receiving downloads, you have the sender, you have the receiver, and the receiver is also the transmitter, right? It's also the conduit. It's a little bulky the way that I said that, but I think you get it. And this is the thing that I'm trying to shift in talking about new dimension channeling. We have made channeling this complicated thing that has actually made us more separate from divinity and from our natural design than brought us closer to it. And with a new dimension perspective, we realize every single moment we are active channels. There are a lot of different kinds of channeling, and channeling your soul into this reality is only one kind, but you are doing it every single day. And when we are receiving downloads, what is happening in that moment is simply greater receptivity, right? Like there's an openness, the willingness to receive, And then there's the presence and awareness to actually recognize what's happening. We're actually receiving downloads all the time. It's just, is the ego awareness able to like land on it specifically long enough to recognize it's there? But downloads are just channeled information. And you are channeling you into this reality right now. Because you can't be here without channeling. The body, the ego, these are not creative forces. They don't do anything. They don't have a human experience as we know it without the soul's energy coming through, right? Like it literally, energy here. Some people can visually see it. It can be measured. Comes in here, hits the crown. There is a technology right here that translates it from one form into another. As it passes through the body and its various energetic gates, it is transmuting, not as a metaphor, literally, transmuting into a different form out of this film projector, right? Like the ego consciousness, the physical body, this creates a film projector. And your soul's information, inclinations, and design, your you-ness, that is the actual film coming through, the data shining into this reality. All of that is channeling. Rising Beautifully, are you wondering if I'm going to be teaching a class on just plant medicine in general, having it as a part of spiritual path, the basics of it? Is that what you're pointing towards? I noticed you just put plant medicine again down here in comments. Because that had not occurred to me. That's a great class. I could definitely talk about that for days, but we would probably do it in like a day long. I'm experimenting with form. We'll see. The thing with me is, what I would ideally like is for all of the classes that I teach to be like a 3 to 5 day in-person workshop where we can get really deep. But we're not there right now. So yeah, if that's kind of the parameters and what you were looking for as far as a plant medicine class, that could definitely be arranged. What I'm experimenting with is there will be some classes that I will do several times, and there will be classes that are, all of the recordings and replays are saved, and you can then purchase it as its own asynchronous class. But ultimately, I want to be creating new classes pretty regularly. So I'm curious to hear from y'all what you would like to explore in a class in a focused, multi-dimensional way. And part of working with me is that it's never just an intellectual experience, right? Even though I have all of these like different intellectual schools I tap into and like pretty words, really what's happening here is an energetic transmission. And that's what the workshop is really based around too. It's not just, I'm going to teach you how to think about yourself as a channel. I'm also going to help weave into your energetic body some geometries that are specifically meant to activate you and your anatomies. I don't know how I got into that. Hello. Welcome to the live. You want to come say hello? Artemis just woke up from her nap. Unearthed Dreamer, thank you. I am so glad that rememberings are flowing for you. Kasha, you're saying you've been having wild dreams lately. So this is coming up a lot. Every live, every client session, people are talking about their dream space and they're just like, what? So grounding, first off. If you want to shift your experience and maybe have a more mild experience with sleep and dreams, invite it in. First off, just because you're wrestling with it doesn't mean you've invited your soul to come up with solutions. So say aloud, hey, spirit, this isn't working for me. Can we please find a more tame experience for me when I'm sleeping? Ground yourself before bed. Now, everyone who has listened to my work before should know at this point that we all need to be giving ourselves 2 to 4 minutes to just breathe and land our awareness fully all the way down past the feet, all the way through the body, right before sleep and right after waking. Just like brushing your teeth, twice a day, you ground your energy at minimum. So ground yourself before you drop into sleep. Enter into that work, because that's what it is. Sleep is work. Sleep is a lot of work. Multidimensionally speaking, we leave here and we go elsewhere. And a lot of times we're teaching and downloading to others when we're away. So enter into that work consciously. Set your intentions. Say, tonight I'm going to really rest. Tonight I'm open to traveling. Tonight I'm not. Start to draw your ego awareness into the process so it can connect with a different kind of experience. And also, some of that is just what your soul is wanting right now. You specifically, Kasha, you're opening in a new way, and you're also picking up a lot of family energy. And coming back a little bit more into your own canoe, letting go of their quiet expectations and your stories of what those are. That's going to also settle things out a little bit more. You're just very open, as many of us are, and you in particular are taking on energies that you don't need to be. So that can be a part of your intention setting and grounding before bed is, I'm going to stay in my energy. I am not consenting to taking on the work of others. Yeah. Do I have any suggestions or tips for relaxation? Well, I'm trying to come up with a different answer than cannabis and masturbation. That's initially what comes to mind. I am not suggesting this for everyone, that's a joke. But there is a certain taking ourselves really seriously that can make it hard to really just like turn off the efforting. Even as spiritual beings, especially those of us who live a life tied to awakening, we get really serious about it. Even our fun, our play is learning and growing and, oh great, I got to confront my shadow today. Like, drop out of relaxation being an efforting. It feels like there's a little bit too much complication even in trying to figure it out, when really for you in particular, it's about turning off. Like, turn off your phone, be out of contact. Don't use that as like, I am recharging so I'm more efficient and can do more for others. Truly stop. Be in meaninglessness. Do things that are fun for their own sake. Make it a game. Like, the moment you notice that you're making it about other people or service, or you're efforting even, you know, like, oh, no, I'm really going to clear my mind. It's going to happen. Don't go there. Dance it out. Switch it up. Like, change the energy. That's the game, right? Like, don't contract. Drop it. And one way to start the inspiration is to do a little bit of like even set a timer, 20, 30 minutes of the best sensory deprivation you can do, like noise canceling headphones, eye mask, quiet room, you know, weighted blanket could be nice. Just really shut it all off so the inside can speak more clearly, because there are specific guidances that you're just not quite able to hear yet. So maybe if you quiet the outside a little bit more And go with the intention of, all right, I'm going to have these 25 minutes of stillness to receive. I will either at the end of that 25 minutes have some inkling of guidance or not. Open palm, don't grip. Okay. I just read the next thing about I had first Reiki healing and had trouble getting the body relaxed, worried to try again. Yes, and see, that's the efforting I'm talking about. Even going to get Reiki to help you relax. It doesn't have to be an effort, the way you're holding it. There's a lot of effort and tension and I need to make this happen. It will never happen as long as you're tightening into it. Thanks, Hayley Noel. Be sure to follow if you haven't. A galaxy. Carlita, thank you. I love it when those appear. It really lights up the inner 6-year-old in me. I have always processed decisions verbally with others and wish to have input from my guides. Super Chris, why don't you just talk to them? Use your imagination. This is for everyone. If you in your awareness are not yet at the place where you feel confident that you are experiencing and interacting with other energies, dimensions, etc., use your imagination. Our imaginations were weaponized against us. So first off, fuck all of those dudes, because your imagination is actually a portal gateway. It is not the place of frivolity or escapism. It is the place where the ego is much more comfortable holding all of its immense power when in conjunction with spirit. So we imagine, we visualize, same difference, we visualize until it comes back to us, right? Does that make sense? We're holding a space open, essentially, for divine guidance and inspiration to fill in the structure. So for you, and this works for a lot of people, but for you, Super Chris, creating the space to hang out with your guides like they're your best friends. You don't need to talk to them like they're Buddha on the mountain. Talk to them like they're your best friends. I swear at Archangel Michael all the time. I straight troll him. It's all of you, right? You are divinity, every part of you. So bring all of that into that relationship with your guides. Start imagining that they're responding. Speak to them aloud and say, hey, what's up with this situation? And then allow space for them to respond. It might be a little slow. You might have to imagine the response at first, but you're going to start to notice that what's happening is their guidance is bubbling up, and the invitation for your imagination to open in that space basically opens the portal for it to come out. So it may not be the purest, most unadulterated expression of that idea or that truth, but it will be enough for you to draw in that energy and get what you need from it. Does that make sense? But you are a verbal processor. Many of us are. We have that external, we literally have to make reality real through the sound waves and through bouncing it off another energy. But ultimately, having that conversation with your guides, as you know, is the ultimate version of that. It can be so fun when you settle into that casual relationship, the back and forth, because it's there. It is ready for you, and you, tuning into your energy, your awareness is there. It's just allowing yourself over time to start dropping into that self-trust, to know that the way that they speak to you is almost indistinguishable from how you're speaking to yourself, because they're basically the same thing. This feels like a good time to do a reminder around discernment of ego versus your higher consciousness. And it's very simple in that ego is the one that ventures into lots of words and complexity. It can be disciplinary, it can be judgmental. It has conditions on it. It doesn't always make you feel good. Spirit, 100% of the time, in some way brings relief or clarity or a good feeling. Spirit is neutral. It does not castigate or shame. It is pure love, right? So it's always going to receive you no matter what you've done or chosen or thought. It's always going to receive you as if you are the ultimate perfection and you're having an experience. Like, all right. And we want to all be practicing that discernment. Because when you learn to automatically tune out the ego part that's trying to kind of get in there and get its hands dirty and control and all of that, when you're able to just tune that out, what you're left with is divine guidance all the time. That's you. That's how you're meant to be on this planet. Play with your guides. Call them in. Give them names. Give them funny names if you want. Ask them what their names are and wait to hear. It might be totally mundane. And you don't need to worry about figuring out, like, who is this being? You know, what's their history? What kind of being? Just tune into, are you my guide? Yes? Great. And it should feel easy and good and open and familiar. And you're just cultivating that. Okay, a bunch of messages just all filtered in at once. Yeah, ego can be defensive. It wants to protect itself. And we have this idea in culture that sometimes it's self-destructive or self-defeating. The ego is never, ever trying to harm itself or to stump itself. It's literally doing the very best that it can to keep you safe. That's its only job, really. Keep you alive. Now, it gets really confused about what's threatening and not, but it's never trying to sabotage itself. It just accidentally does that sometimes out of its best efforts. So we don't want to ever demonize the ego. We want to love it. Like a small child. The child only has so much capacity of understanding and ability. And we don't look at the 5-year-old and scream at it and be like, God, you're so stupid. Why didn't you know better? So why do we do that to ourselves in our own heads? The galaxy. Thanks for the hearts, Rosewater. Hello, Trisha. All right. I'm feeling ready to nourish my body a bit before I return to recording these meditations. Let's see, something just popped up I feel called to look at, so I will not close out quite this moment. What is this? Cash is saying, what if my guide's energy is so grand and a little overwhelming and I get scared and dismissive? That's very common. Very, very common. And that's okay. We can do that over and over again. They are in no way annoyed or frustrated or anything. They're just always going to be like, oh, sweetie, okay, we'll try a different way. We'll try again. And so grounding is the first part of that. If you're really grounded, it's not going to feel as overwhelming and threatening. The more that you invite the experience, the more used to it you will be, is another piece. And talking aloud to your ego while you're in the experience, while you're connecting, you start to feel that fear rise. You can ask for help. You can say, hey, ego's having a hard time. Can you guys offer some support? Or you can speak directly to your ego. Hey, I feel you. You're feeling frightened right now. That's okay. It's okay that you're feeling that way, but I've got you. We're completely safe. And just feel your body. Look at your physical surroundings for a moment. Like, let the body register. We're not being chased by a lion right now. Ground that, and then bring your awareness back down, running all the way through. Fear, anxiety, overwhelm, all of that is a signal that our energy is not running all the way through, that it's getting caught up here. Because when you are fully rooted and you are in contact with your own divinity, there is no fear and anxiety. It's pretty much impossible. Just keep running all the way through. And this is another reason that we want to all be doing our twice-a-day practice when we wake up and right before bed, where we're grounding and inviting the energy all the way through. Just because you slept through the night does not mean you're waking up grounded. Many of you present right now, in fact, are rarely truly grounded for an extended period of time. You live your lives like heart up. Some of you just like barely even tethered. You're just like out and kind of anchored to the earth, but not really. Which means then you are subject to all of its like hurricane winds and everything. Bring it all the way through and practice that so it becomes your default. You're welcome, Kasha. I hope that was helpful for others as well. Okay. I'm having fun here, but I'm noticing my body calling me to tend to it. So I'm going to go now. And I'm hoping that you all get good rest tonight and remember to do your grounding practice. I'm going to be banging this gong like all year long. Until it feels like everyone listening is really grounding, because I can feel you. If anybody's interested in learning more about my channeling workshop next weekend, follow the link in my profile. You'll see the little link in the link tree that's listed for January 29th, 129, next Saturday. And yeah, sending you guys lots of love. Thanks for being here and holding space and bringing your questions. Thanks, Trisha. Bye, everyone.